Kang Day-won stood at the observation window of Frontier Research Station Epsilon 7 and watched the stars. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Standing in space, surrounded by alien species from across the galaxy, working together to unlock the mysteries of the universe. But dreams, he was learning, rarely matched reality. Behind him, the station cafeteria buzzed with voices. Most of them were not human. The Draknor spoke in harsh reptilian hisses. The Vextari clicked their mandibles in their insect language. The crystalline beings hummed in frequencies that made his teeth ache. Day-won understood none of it, but he knew what they were saying. He always knew. They were talking about how weak humans were. Day-won turned from the window and walked to the food dispenser. As he passed a table of Draknor engineers, one of them extended a clawed foot and tripped him. He stumbled but caught himself before falling. Laughter erupted from the table. "Careful, human," the Draknor said in accented galactic standard. "Your bones break so easily." Day-won said nothing. He continued to the dispenser, got his meal, and sat alone at a corner table. This was his third week on the station, and nothing had changed since day one. The other species treated humans like children. No, worse than children. Like pets that somehow learned to walk upright. He had arrived with impressive credentials. Top of his class at the Terran Engineering Institute. 5 years of experience on Earth's most advanced spacecraft. He had designed propulsion systems that increased efficiency by 40%. None of it mattered here. On his first day, the station director had looked at his resume and assigned him to maintenance. Not engineering, not research, maintenance. His job was to crawl through access tunnels and replace burnt-out components. Work that any species could do. Work that required no thinking at all. Dr. Yu Hana entered the cafeteria and spotted him immediately. She was the only other human on this shift, a xenobiologist who studied alien life forms. She crossed the room with her tray and sat across from him without asking. "They tripped you again," she said. "It was not a question." "It's fine," Day-won replied. "It's not fine." Hana's eyes flashed with anger. "I reported Velcros yesterday for destroying my samples. The director told me I was being too sensitive, that I needed to understand Draknor culture better." Day-won picked at his food. It was nutritionally complete but tasted like cardboard. "What did you expect? Humans have been part of the galactic community for only 30 years. These species have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. To them, we're newcomers, primitives. We built starships in less than a century after splitting the atom," Hana said fiercely. "We went from the Wright brothers to the moon in 66 years. That's faster than any species in recorded history. But do they care? No, because we're not as physically strong as them." She was right, of course. Humans were physically inferior to most galactic species. The average Draknor was 7 feet tall with scales that could stop a knife. The Vexitari had exoskeletons and could lift 10 times their body weight. Even the peaceful crystalline beings could survive in the vacuum of space. Humans, soft skin, fragile bones, no natural weapons or armor. They required spacesuits to survive outside their tiny comfort zone of temperature and pressure. By galactic standards, they were pathetic. "I found something today," Day-won said quietly. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "In the maintenance tunnels, a problem with the shield array." Hana leaned forward. "What kind of problem?" "The power distribution is uneven. There's a vulnerability in Section 7. If someone knew about it, they could disable the entire shield system without triggering alarms." "Did you report it?" "I tried. Thalaxi told me I was wrong. She said the Vextari designed these systems thousands of years ago, and a human couldn't possibly understand them well enough to find a flaw." Hana's expression darkened. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing." "What can I do?" Day-won pushed his tray away. "If the Vextari chief engineer says I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. That's how it works here." The next day there was a staff meeting. All senior personnel gathered in the main conference room. Day-won sat in the back row with Hana. Commander Lee Ji-won, the head of station security and the only other human in the room, sat near the front. She was former military and she carried herself like it. Straight back, alert eyes, hands always ready. Velcro stood at the podium, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been a smile. "Before we begin, I have an announcement. I have reviewed the personnel files and I must raise a concern." Day-won's stomach tightened. He knew what was coming. "This station employs 3 humans in technical positions." Velcro continued. "I question the wisdom of this decision. Humans lack the physical capability and mental processing speed required for complex operations. Furthermore, they are emotionally unstable and prone to irrational behavior. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. No one objected, not even the station director, who simply nodded thoughtfully. I propose we reassign the humans to observation roles only. They can watch and learn, but they should not be trusted with important tasks. Commander G1 stood up. Engineer Velcros, with respect, humans have been functioning perfectly in their assigned roles. There have been no incidents, no failures, no complaints about performance. Velcros turned his yellow eyes on her. That is because we have given them simple tasks that even a human cannot fail at. But should we risk more? I think not. Laughter filled the room. Daewon felt his face burn with shame and anger. Beside him, Hana's hands were clenched into fists. The station director raised a hand for silence. Your concerns are noted, Velcros. However, Galactic Council regulations require diverse staffing. The humans will remain in their current positions. It was a small victory, but it felt hollow. The director had defended them only because regulations required it, not because he believed in their abilities. That night, Daewon couldn't sleep. He lay in his small quarters and stared at the ceiling. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in Earth's last war before global unity. His grandfather had told him stories about survival, about never giving up even when everything seemed lost. Humans are persistent, the old man had said. That's our strength. We don't quit. Daewon wondered if persistence mattered anymore. In space, surrounded by beings stronger and faster and smarter than him, what good was refusing to quit? He was about to finally drift off to sleep when the alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed in his quarters. The station's AI voice echoed through the corridors, calm but urgent. Unknown vessels detected. All personnel report to designated stations. This is not a drill. Daewon grabbed his uniform and ran. In the corridors, other crew members were rushing toward their posts. Their faces showed confusion and fear. The station was on the edge of explored space. Nothing should be out here. Nothing that wasn't already cataloged and understood. He reached the engineering bay and found chaos. Screens flashed with data. The senior engineers were shouting at each other in multiple languages. Thalaxi's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. What is it? Daewon asked. No one answered. They were all staring at the main display. Daewon followed their gaze and felt his blood run cold. 3 massive ships hung in space outside the station. They were unlike anything in the galactic database. Organic and metallic at the same time, covered in what looked like black armor with veins of red light pulsing through it. They were enormous, each one larger than the station itself, and they were getting closer. Daewon's mind raced. He thought about the shield vulnerability he had discovered, the one Thalaxi had dismissed. A terrible suspicion formed in his mind, but before he could voice it, every screen in the engineering bay went dark. Then they came back on, showing a single message in perfect galactic standard. We have come to observe. You will not resist. You will not flee. You will wait. Someone tried to activate the shields. Nothing happened. Someone else tried to charge the weapons. Nothing happened. The station was completely defenseless. Daewon closed his eyes. He had been right about the vulnerability. And now whoever was in those ships had used it perfectly. The mockery didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered except survival. And something told him that the beings in those ships were about to teach everyone on this station a lesson they would never forget. The command center was filled with panic. Station Director Korvan, a crystalline being who usually glowed with calm blue light, was now flashing red and orange. His species changed colors with emotion, and right now he was broadcasting fear to everyone in the room. Report, he shouted. What are those ships? Why aren't our defenses working? Thalaxi's mandibles clicked frantically as she worked the console. The shields are offline. Weapons are offline. Communication systems have been compromised. We can receive but cannot transmit beyond the station. How is that possible? Velcros demanded. This station has the most advanced defensive systems in the sector. Daewon stood near the back of the room with Hana and Commander G1. He knew how it was possible. He had found the weakness days ago. He had reported it. No one had listened. Commander G1 stepped forward. Director requests permission to mobilize security forces. We should prepare for boarding. Denied, Korvan said immediately. We do not know their intentions. If we appear hostile, they might destroy us. With respect, Director, they have already disabled our defenses, G1 replied. That is a hostile act. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the command center dimmed. Every screen switched to the same image. A being appeared and the entire room fell silent. It was enormous. Daewon estimated it stood at least 9 feet tall. Its body was covered in segmented armor that looked like it had grown there rather than been built. The armor was black with red light pulsing through cracks and seams. Its face was angular and sharp, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. When it moved, its body made no sound, as if it existed slightly outside normal space. "I am Korvath," the being said. Its voice was deep and resonant, speaking perfect galactic standard without an accent. "Leader of the Shal Corps, you know of us from your ancient records. We have returned." Daewon saw several alien species react with immediate terror. He didn't understand why until Hana whispered beside him. "The Shal Corps. I read about them in xenohistory. They were the apex predators of the galaxy 10,000 years ago. They controlled half the known systems. Then they just disappeared. Everyone thought they went extinct." "Clearly not," Daewon muttered. Director Korvan tried to compose himself. His color shifted to a diplomatic purple. "Great Korvath, we welcome you to our station." "We mean no offense." "How may we serve you?" "You cannot serve us," Korvath replied. "We do not require service. We have come to observe the state of galactic civilization. We are disappointed." "Disappointed?" Korvan repeated carefully. "The galaxy has grown weak. Prey species dominate. Scavengers multiply. True predators are nearly extinct. This concerns us." Velcros puffed up his chest. "The Draknor are descended from the greatest hunters of our world." "We are no prey!" Korvath's golden eyes fixed on the reptilian engineer. "Your ancestors were predators. You are not. You hunt with machines and weapons built by others. You have forgotten the old ways. You are soft." The insult was so direct and devastating that Velcro stood speechless. No one dared to speak in his defense. "We will remain at this station," Korvath continued. "We will observe your species. You will not attempt to leave or communicate with the outside. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed. If you resist, you will be eliminated. These terms are not negotiable." The screen went dark. Normal lighting returned. The command center erupted in frantic discussion. Some wanted to find a way to send a distress signal. Others argued for compliance. Velcros demanded they attempt to fight back. Daewon watched it all and said nothing. He was thinking about Korvath's words. True predators. The Shal Corps had returned to evaluate predator species. What did that mean? 6 hours later, a shuttle detached from one of the Shal Corps ships. It docked with the station without asking permission. Security forces assembled at the docking bay, but Commander Jiwan ordered them to stand down. She knew they couldn't win a fight. The docking bay doors opened. 5 Shal Corps warriors entered the station. They moved with perfect coordination, like a single organism split into 5 bodies. Their armor made faint humming sounds. Their eyes swept the room, cataloging every detail, every potential threat. Korvath was the tallest. He walked at the center of the group, protected but clearly in command. The warriors spread out, examining the station personnel who had gathered to witness the arrival. Daewon stood with the other engineers. His heart was pounding, but he forced himself to breathe slowly and stay calm. Panic would help no one. Korvath moved through the crowd. He stopped briefly at each group, studying them. When he reached the Draknor section, Velcros tried to meet his gaze with defiance. Korvath stared at him for exactly 3 seconds, then moved on without comment. The dismissal was more insulting than any words. He examined the Vextari, the crystalline beings, the methane-breathing Kulathi in their environmental suits. Each time he spent a few seconds studying them, then moved on. Then he reached the humans. There were only 5 humans on the station. 3 were present now, Daewon, Hana, and Commander Jiwan. The other 2 were off duty in their quarters. Korvath approached them and stopped. He stared at Jiwan first. She stood at attention, military perfect, meeting his gaze without flinching. Korvath tilted his head slightly, then looked at Hana. She was terrified but hiding it well, her scientist mind probably cataloging every detail of his appearance. Then his golden eyes fixed on Daewon. Time seemed to slow. Daewon felt exposed, as if those eyes could see through his skin and bone directly into his thoughts. He wanted to look away. Every instinct screamed at him to lower his gaze to show submission. But something deeper, something older, kept his eyes locked on Korvath's. He didn't know how long they stood like that. 5 seconds. 10. 20. The entire docking bay had gone silent. Finally, Korvath spoke. His voice was quiet, meant only for Day One to hear, but in the silence everyone caught the words. "You do not fear as prey should." Interesting. He reached out with one armored hand and touched Day One's shoulder. The touch was gentle but firm. Then he moved on, continuing his inspection of the station personnel. Day One remained frozen in place. His shoulder tingled where Korvath had touched him. Around him, other species were whispering. He caught fragments of their words. Confused. Disturbed. Why had the ancient predator taken such interest in a human? "What just happened?" Hana whispered. "I don't know," Day One replied. But that was a lie. He did know. Or at least he suspected. Korvath had been looking for something in each species. Testing for something. And in Day One he had found it. After Korvath completed his inspection, he addressed the assembled crowd. "You will continue your normal duties. My warriors will observe. Do not interfere with them. Do not attempt to study us. Do not speak to us unless we initiate contact. These rules are simple. Follow them and you will survive." The Shalkor dispersed throughout the station. 2 remained in the docking bay. The others vanished into the corridors, silent as ghosts despite their size. The station personnel slowly dispersed, returning to their duties or their quarters. Everyone moved carefully, aware that they were being watched by beings that could kill them without effort. Day One returned to his quarters. He sat on his bed and tried to process what had happened. The Shalkor had come. They had disabled the station effortlessly. They were searching for something among the galactic species, and Korvath had singled him out. His door chime sounded. Hana entered without waiting for permission. "We need to talk," she said urgently. "I've been researching the Shalkor, their culture, their history, everything I can find in the database. And they're not just predators. They're the predators. 10,000 years ago, they ruled the galaxy through a philosophy of strength. They believed only species that retained their hunting instincts deserved to survive. They culled weak species, forced strong ones to prove themselves. Why did they leave? The records aren't clear. The dominant theory is that they found the galaxy lacking. No worthy opponents, so they retreated into deep space to wait." Day One thought about that. Wait for what? Hana met his eyes. For a species to evolve. For a new predator to rise. For someone worthy to challenge them. That's insane. Look at the species in this galaxy. The Draknor alone could field armies that would blot out stars. The Vextari have technology beyond human understanding. No single species could challenge the Shalkor. No, Hana agreed. Not as they are now. But Korvath is looking for potential. Raw, undeveloped potential. Day One's blood ran cold. "You think he found it?" "In me. In humans," Hana corrected. "I think he found it in humans." They sat in silence, contemplating the implications. Outside in the corridors of the station, the Shalkor watched and waited. And somewhere in his ship, Korvath was planning something that would change everything. 3 days passed under Shalkor observation. The station fell into an uneasy routine. People did their jobs, avoided the silent warriors who watched from corridors and corners and tried to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Day One felt eyes on him constantly. Not just the Shalkor, though they watched everyone. The other species on the station had noticed Korvath's interest in him. Velcros glared whenever they passed in the corridors. Thalaxi clicked her mandibles nervously around him. Even the usually friendly crystalline beings kept their distance. On the 4th day, Korvath summoned the entire station to the main auditorium. Everyone gathered in tense silence. The Shalkor leader stood on the central platform, flanked by his warriors. His armor gleamed under the lights, red veins pulsing with some unknown energy. "We have completed our initial observations," Korvath announced. His voice carried easily through the large space. "We have confirmed what we suspected. This station represents the current state of galactic civilization. Weak, complacent, prey masquerading as equals." Director Korvan stepped forward, his crystalline body glowing with diplomatic colors. "Great Korvath, we do not understand your accusations. The species here have built a peaceful, prosperous society. We have eliminated war, hunger, disease. Is that not progress?" "It is stagnation," Korvath replied. "You have achieved comfort at the cost of growth. Your species no longer struggle. They no longer adapt. They no longer evolve. In another 1,000 years they will be extinct, crushed by the first true threat they encounter. Then why have you come?" Someone shouted from the crowd. To threaten us? To remind us you're stronger? Korvath's golden eyes swept the auditorium. We come to find hope. 10,000 years ago we left because we found no worthy opponents. No species with the potential to challenge us. We return now to see if anything has changed, and we have found something interesting. His gaze fixed on the small group of humans standing together near the back. Daewon felt his stomach tighten. The humans, Korvath continued, such a fragile species. Weak bodies, no natural weapons, no armor or claws or venom. By all measures, they should have been eliminated by stronger predators on their home world. Yet they survived. More than survived. They dominated. Velcros couldn't contain himself. Impossible. Humans are the weakest species in the galaxy. They can barely survive outside their climate-controlled environments. Physically, yes, Korvath agreed. But you mistake the nature of predation. The deadliest hunters are not always the strongest. The deadliest hunters are the most persistent. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed an ancient Earth landscape, grasslands stretching to the horizon. A human hunter, barely clothed, carrying a primitive spear. 200,000 years ago, humans hunted prey that was faster and stronger than them. How? Not with strength, with endurance. They would wound an animal and track it for days. Days. The prey would run until exhausted, then run more. Eventually, after miles and hours and overwhelming fatigue, the prey would collapse, and the humans would be there, still walking, still tracking, never stopping. The hologram changed to show a marathon, hundreds of humans running for hours without stopping. Humans are the only species in this galaxy that evolved persistence hunting as their primary strategy. No other predator in galactic records hunts this way. It is too slow, too patient, too psychologically demanding. But for humans, it is instinct. Hana stood beside Daewon, her mind racing. She had studied evolution, had read about persistence hunting in ancient humans, but hearing Korvath explain its significance to a room full of alien species was surreal. Furthermore, Korvath continued, humans are pack hunters with social bonds that transcend logic. They will die for pack mates they barely know. They form emotional attachments to individuals outside their species. They create complex deceptions and strategies. Combined with persistence, this makes them uniquely dangerous. The Laxi clicked forward. This is ancient history. Modern humans do not hunt. They have forgotten these instincts, have they? Korvath turned his attention fully to the Vextari engineer. Instinct does not vanish in a few thousand years. It merely sleeps, waiting to be awakened. He looked directly at Daewon. You human engineer, come forward. Daewon's heart hammered. Hana grabbed his arm. Don't, she whispered. But Commander Jiwan nodded to him. Military training recognized orders that couldn't be refused. Daewon walked down the aisle between rows of staring aliens. He climbed onto the platform and stood before Korvath. Up close, the Shalkor leader was even more imposing. He towered over Daewon by 3 feet. His armor hummed with power. His eyes glowed like molten metal. Tell them your name, Korvath said. Kang Daewon, he replied. His voice was steady, which surprised him. Kang Daewon, Korvath repeated. When I first observed you, I saw something the others missed. When I approached, you did not cower. You met my gaze. You controlled your fear. Why? Daewon considered the question. I don't know. Instinct, I guess. Looking away felt wrong. Instinct, Korvath said to the audience. He does not understand it himself, but his body knows. Prey animals lower their gaze to avoid challenging predators. But persistence hunters? They maintain eye contact. They track their target without blinking. They never show submission because they are not prey. Velcros made a dismissive sound. This proves nothing. Any species can maintain eye contact. Then you will not mind participating in a demonstration, Korvath said. It was not a question. One of the Shalkor warriors moved forward. It stopped 3 feet from Velcros and simply stared at him. The Draknor engineer puffed up his chest, trying to appear confident. He met the warrior's gaze. 10 seconds passed. 20. Velcros began to shift uncomfortably. 30 seconds. His scales rippled with nervous tension. At 45 seconds, he looked away. A warrior species, Korvath observed. Yet he cannot maintain eye contact for 1 minute with a silent observer. This is typical of prey psychology hiding behind warrior culture. The warrior turned to Daewon. Without being asked, Daewon understood what was expected. He faced the warrior and met its gaze. The auditorium fell silent. 1 minute passed. 2. The warrior's eyes were black and empty, revealing nothing. Day One felt sweat running down his back, but he didn't look away. His legs began to ache from standing so still. 3 minutes. Something strange happened at the 4-minute mark. Day One stopped thinking about the test. His mind went quiet. He simply stood and stared, feeling nothing but a distant awareness of the warrior's presence. Time became meaningless. At 6 minutes, Korvath raised a hand. The warrior stepped back and returned to its position. 6 minutes without breaking eye contact, Korvath announced, without discomfort, without submission. This is not something that can be trained easily. This is instinct. He turned to address the full auditorium again. I propose a test. A hunt, the ancient ritual of my people. If this human can survive 3 cycles in a controlled environment against my hunters, I will acknowledge that humans possess predator potential. If he fails, I will mark humanity as prey and proceed accordingly. What does proceed accordingly mean? Director Korvan asked nervously. We will claim this station and everyone in it, Korvath replied simply. You will become subjects of the Shalkor, as all prey species were in the old days. Chaos erupted. Aliens shouted protests and objections. The security chief demanded this was against all galactic laws. Velcros called for weapons to be distributed. Korvath waited for the noise to die down. Your laws do not apply to us. Your weapons are useless against us. Your protests are meaningless. The hunt will occur. The only question is whether the human accepts. He looked at Day One. You understand you will likely die? Yes, Day One said quietly. You understand your refusal will doom everyone here? Yes, then you have a choice. Accept the hunt or refuse and accept the consequences. Day One thought about his grandfather's stories. About humans who never gave up even when everything was lost. About persistence. About refusing to quit no matter the odds. He thought about Hana and Commander, Jiwon and the hundreds of beings on this station who would suffer if he refused. He thought about every human who had ever been dismissed as weak, as inferior, as barely worthy of notice. I accept, he said. For the first time, Korvath's expression changed. His eyes brightened and something that might have been satisfaction crossed his angular features. Good, he said. The hunt begins at dawn. Prepare yourself, Kang Day One. You're about to discover what your species truly is. The auditorium emptied in stunned silence. Aliens filed out, whispering among themselves. Most looked at Day One with pity, some with disgust that he had accepted such an unfair challenge. Velcros smirked as he passed. A human playing predator. This will be entertaining to watch. Hana rushed to Day One's side. You can't do this. It's suicide. You're an engineer, not a soldier. I know, he replied. Commander Jiwon approached. I'll work with you tonight. Basic survival tactics. It's not much, but it's something. Thank you, Day One said. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters and thought about what was coming. 3 Shalkor hunters would track him through an environment designed to test every aspect of predation. He had no combat training, no hunting experience, no survival skills beyond basic sta. The biodome was massive. Day One stood at the entrance and stared into what looked like an entire wilderness compressed into artificial space. The Shalkor had constructed it overnight using technology he couldn't begin to understand. Forests, caves, water systems, rocky outcrops. All of it real, all of it dangerous. Korvath stood beside him at the entrance. The rules are simple. You will be released into the dome. After 1 hour, 3 of my hunters will enter. If you survive for 3 cycles, you win. A cycle is 24 hours of station time. And if I don't survive, Day One asked, you will die, and humanity will be marked as prey forever. Korvath's voice held no emotion. The hunters will not kill you immediately. They are instructed to test you, to see how you respond to pressure. But make no mistake, they are apex predators. They have hunted for centuries. You are an engineer with no training. You're saying I have no chance? I am saying the odds are against you. But odds mean nothing to true predators. They find a way. Korvath placed a hand on Day One's shoulder. Remember what your species is. Remember why you survived when stronger creatures did not. Now go. Day One stepped into the dome. The entrance sealed behind him with a hiss. He was alone. The first thing he noticed was the air. It smelled like earth. Real dirt and plants and water, not the recycled atmosphere of the station. The second thing he noticed was the silence. Complete and total silence except for his own breathing and heartbeat. He looked around, trying to understand the environment. dense forest to his left, open grassland to his right, a small stream running through the center, hills in the distance. Behind him, cave entrances dark against rocky cliffs. He had 1 hour before the hunters entered. 1 hour to prepare. Commander Jiwan's training from the previous night echoed in his mind. Find high ground first, understand the terrain, locate water sources, identify choke points and escape routes, and most importantly, think like an engineer. This is a constructed environment. Use that. Day 1 moved quickly through the grassland toward the hills. As he walked, his eyes scanned everything. He noticed environmental control vents hidden in the vegetation, power conduits running beneath artificial rocks, water pipes feeding the stream system. This wasn't natural wilderness. It was a machine pretending to be nature, and machines could be manipulated. He reached the hills and climbed to a good vantage point. From here, he could see most of the dome. He studied the layout carefully, committing it to memory. Then he began moving again, this time looking for specific infrastructure points. He found what he needed near the northern edge, a primary control junction for the environmental systems. It was poorly hidden, probably because the Shalcor never expected anyone to look for it. Day 1 examined the panel and smiled grimly. He understood this technology. He could work with this. Using a piece of metal he pried from a nearby vent cover, he carefully opened the control panel. Inside was exactly what he expected. Temperature controls, humidity regulators, lighting systems, water flow. He didn't sabotage anything yet. That would alert the hunters too early. Instead, he memorized the layout and prepared for later. The hour passed too quickly. Day 1 positioned himself in the forest, hidden in dense undergrowth with good sight lines in multiple directions. He controlled his breathing and waited. 3 Shalcor hunters entered the dome. They moved with terrifying grace, their armor making no sound despite its bulk. They spread out immediately, beginning their search pattern. Day 1 watched from his hiding spot. He saw how they moved, how they communicated with subtle gestures, how they scanned the environment. They were experienced and coordinated. Fighting them directly would be suicide, so he ran. Not panicked running, not flight. Controlled movement with purpose. He stayed low, used cover, and moved toward the water system. He had a plan. The hunters picked up his trail within minutes. They were fast. Faster than he expected. One of them spotted him crossing an open area, and suddenly all 3 were converging on his position. Day 1's heart hammered as he ran toward the stream. Behind him, he could hear them closing the distance. He reached the water's edge and dove in without hesitation. The stream was deeper than it looked. He swam underwater, following the current. His lungs burned, but he pushed himself further. When he finally surfaced, he was 50 meters downstream, hidden by an overhang of vegetation. The hunters reached the point where he had entered the water. They paused, scanning both directions. Then they split up, one following each bank while the third waited. Day 1 remained perfectly still in the water. Minutes passed. The cold seeped into his bones, but he didn't move. He watched the hunter on the bank walk past his position twice, searching. Finally, the hunters regrouped and moved on, assuming he had gone further downstream. Day 1 waited another 10 minutes before climbing out. He was shivering and soaked, but he had bought time. The first cycle became a pattern. Run, hide, wait, use the environment. Avoid direct confrontation. The hunters were faster and stronger, but Day 1 was patient. He never panicked. He never made obvious mistakes, but it wasn't enough to just survive. He needed to turn this into an actual hunt, and for that, he needed to change the environment itself. On the second cycle, Day 1 began his preparations. When the hunters weren't near, he accessed environmental control points throughout the dome. He didn't shut anything down completely. That would be too obvious. Instead, he made subtle changes. Temperature drops in certain zones. Humidity increases in others. Altered water flow patterns. He also created false trails. He would walk through muddy areas to leave clear footprints, then backtrack carefully in the water. He broke branches at eye level in one direction while actually moving another way. He used his engineering knowledge to create the illusion of movement where there was none. The hunters adapted quickly. They learned his tricks and started predicting his movements. During one encounter, they nearly cornered him in a cave system. Day 1 only escaped by crawling through a narrow tunnel that was too small for their armored bodies. He emerged on the other side, bleeding from scrapes and cuts. His clothes were torn. His body ached from constant movement and too little rest, but he was still alive. Outside the dome, the entire station watched through observation screens. It had become the only thing anyone talked about. The human engineer versus the Shalkor hunters. Most aliens bet on his death within the first cycle. When he survived that, they adjusted their predictions. Maybe 2 cycles. Certainly not 3. Hana watched every moment, barely eating or sleeping. She saw patterns in Day One's movement that others missed. He wasn't running randomly. He was learning. Each encounter taught him something new about the hunters. Each escape showed him another way to use the environment. He's thinking like an engineer, she told Commander Jiwan. He's treating this like a problem to solve. Not a fight to win. Will it be enough? Jiwan asked. I don't know, but it's the only chance he has. Inside the dome, the second cycle was ending. Daewon had survived longer than anyone expected, but he was paying the price. He was exhausted. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. He had barely slept, grabbing only brief moments of rest when he was certain the hunters were far away. During one such rest, hidden in a hollow beneath exposed tree roots, he thought about Korvath's words. Persistence hunting. His ancestors had done this for days, tracking wounded animals across vast distances. They had endured pain and exhaustion because giving up meant death. He understood now. This wasn't about being strong or fast. This was about refusing to stop. About taking one more step when every muscle screamed to quit. About thinking clearly when fear urged panic. The hunters found him during his rest. He heard them approaching and forced his aching body to move. This time they were too close. One of them spotted him immediately and the chase was on. Daewon ran with everything he had left. His lungs burned. His legs felt like lead. The hunters were right behind him, close enough that he could hear their armor humming. He reached the rocky cliffs near the cave entrances. Without thinking, he began climbing. His hands found holds in the rock face. His feet pushed him upward. Behind him, the hunters followed. They were faster climbers, too. One of them reached out and grabbed his ankle. The grip was like iron. Daewon kicked desperately with his other foot, connecting with the hunter's helmet. The impact sent pain shooting through his leg, but the hunter released him. Daewon scrambled over the top of the cliff and didn't stop. He ran along the ridge looking for any advantage. Then he saw it. A narrow bridge of rock spanning a deep chasm. It was barely wide enough for one person. He ran across without hesitation. The rock was loose and crumbling. Behind him, the first hunter started across. The weight of its armor made the stone crack ominously. Daewon reached the other side and turned. He picked up a large rock and threw it at the bridge. Not at the hunter, at the bridge itself. The already weakened stone gave way. The bridge collapsed, taking the hunter with it. The hunter fell into the chasm and disappeared. Daewon heard a heavy impact far below, then silence. The other 2 hunters stood on the opposite side of the chasm, staring at him. For the first time, they seemed to reassess their prey. Daewon stared back, breathing hard. He had just eliminated the fallen hunter climbed out of the chasm 6 hours later. Its armor was dented, its movement slower, but it was alive. It rejoined the other 2 without ceremony. The hunt continued, but something had changed. Daewon had changed. He stopped running. Not because he was too tired to continue, though his body was pushed far beyond its limits. Not because he had given up, though every logical part of his mind said this was hopeless. He stopped because running was no longer the right strategy. For 2 cycles, he had been prey. Now it was time to become something else. He had learned their patterns. The hunters moved in a rotation, never all together but never completely separated. They communicated through subtle signals he couldn't see but could predict based on their movements. They were efficient and coordinated, but that efficiency created predictability. Daewon found a small cave system in the northern sector. He entered but didn't hide. Instead, he worked. Using pieces of metal and stone, he created something that looked like a shelter. He left clear signs of occupancy. A makeshift bed, water containers. It looked like a desperate person's attempt to create a safe place. Then he left through a back entrance and waited. The hunters found his false shelter within 3 hours. They approached cautiously, expecting an ambush. They searched the cave thoroughly. They found nothing because Daewon was a quarter-kilometer away, watching through a gap in the rocks. More importantly, he watched what they did after finding the empty shelter. How they analyzed the evidence. How they decided on their next search pattern. The damaged hunter moved slower, favoring its left side. That was useful information. Day one began to hunt the hunters. He created false trails that led to nowhere. He sabotaged environmental controls in specific areas, creating fog banks and temperature drops that made certain zones harder to navigate. He used his engineering knowledge to disable lighting systems along paths he wanted them to avoid. The hunters adapted, but adaptation took time. And time was what Day one had. Time and persistence. He identified one hunter who was more aggressive than the others. It took more risks, moved faster, sometimes separated from the group. Day one began targeting that one specifically. He left trails that only the aggressive hunter would notice, clues that required quick thinking and faster movement to follow. For 6 hours, he led that hunter on a chase through the most difficult terrain in the dome. Dense forest where armor would catch on branches, rocky areas where footing was treacherous. Always moving, always just out of reach. The hunter followed relentlessly. It was stronger and faster, but Day one had learned something crucial. The shellcore armor was powerful, but it required energy, and after hours of constant pursuit, that energy was draining. He led the hunter to a section of the dome where he had modified the environmental controls. The temperature was higher here. The humidity extreme, conditions that made the armor work harder to maintain its systems. Then Day one stopped running. He turned and faced the hunter. The shellcore warrior approached cautiously. It knew this was a trap. It scanned the area looking for hidden dangers, but there were none. Just Day one standing in an open clearing waiting. The hunter charged. Day one waited until the last possible moment, then dove to the side. The hunter's momentum carried it past. Day one rolled to his feet and ran again, but not far. Just enough to maintain distance, the hunter pursued. Day one led it in circles through the clearing. The hunter was faster, but Day one was lighter. He could turn sharper, change direction quicker. And with each minute, the hunter's movements became slightly slower as its armor's energy reserves depleted in the hostile environment. After an hour of this, the hunter finally stopped. It stood in the center of the clearing, breathing hard, armor flickering. It had realized what was happening. It was being exhausted, being run down, being hunted. Day one stood at the edge of the clearing. He was exhausted too, barely able to stand, but he didn't stop. He started walking in circles around the hunter, maintaining distance, never letting it rest. The hunter tried to charge again, but its movements were sluggish. Day one evaded easily. He kept walking, kept moving, never stopping. This was persistence hunting in its purest form, not about strength or speed, about outlasting, about refusing to quit when your prey, no matter how strong, eventually had to rest. Finally, the hunter's armor shut down completely. It stood motionless as its systems rebooted. In that moment, Day one approached. He didn't attack. He simply stood before the hunter and met its eyes through the helmet. "I win," he said quietly. The hunter's armor rebooted. It could have killed Day one easily in that moment, but it didn't. Instead, it stepped back and raised one fist to its chest in what Day one recognized as a salute. Then it turned and walked away, withdrawing from the hunt. Day one collapsed to his knees. His body shook with exhaustion and relief. 2 hunters remained, but he had proven something. He had beaten a shellcore warrior not through combat, but through pure persistence. Outside the dome, the observation room was in chaos. What they had just witnessed shouldn't have been possible. A human, the weakest species in the galactic community, had hunted a shellcore warrior to exhaustion. Velcro stood frozen, his usual arrogance completely gone. Thalaxi's mandibles clicked rapidly in confusion. Even Director Corvin had no words, his crystalline body cycling through colors too quickly to interpret. Hana was crying. He actually did it. He hunted them. Commander Jiwon watched with intense focus. It's not over. 2 hunters left. And now they know what he's capable of. They won't make the same mistakes. Korvath's voice suddenly echoed through the observation room. He had been watching everything, of course. You begin to understand. This is what humanity was. What they forgot. The most terrifying predator is not the one that kills quickly. It is the one that never stops. That follows for days. That waits for exhaustion and mistakes. That turns prey into predator through sheer refusal to quit. He paused, his golden eyes fixed on the screens. Your ancestors hunted animals 10 times their size with nothing but sticks and stones. Not through strength, through patience. They would wound a mammoth and track it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss. Other predators would give up after hours. Humans never gave up. They walked until their prey could walk no more. Ambassador Crixtal, the crystalline being from the Galactic Council, stepped forward. Why show us this? Why reveal humanity's potential? Because the galaxy has grown soft, Korvath replied. Because you need to know what you've been dismissing. Because somewhere in the darkness beyond known space, threats are gathering. Threats that will not care about your peaceful civilization or your comfortable lives. And when those threats arrive, you will need predators to face them. You think humans can be those predators? I think they already are. They just forgot. This human, Kang Daewon, is remembering. Watch. Inside the dome, Daewon had recovered enough to move. He found a water source and drank deeply. He tended to his wounds as best he could. Then he began planning his next move. 2 hunters remained. The damaged one and one that had been cautious throughout. They were adapting to his tactics. He needed to change his approach again. He spent hours setting up a complex series of traps. Not physical traps, those wouldn't work against Shalkor armor. Psychological traps, false evidence suggesting he was preparing for a final stand. Signs of weakness and desperation. A trail leading to a defensible position that wasn't actually defensible. He wanted them to think they had him cornered. Wanted them to believe they were closing in for the kill, because cornered prey acts predictably. But he wasn't prey anymore. The 2 remaining hunters found his trail. They followed it carefully, weapons ready. They reached the position where all the evidence suggested he would make his last stand. He wasn't there. He was behind them, 100 meters back, watching. While they searched the false position, he moved to the environmental control system he had been gradually modifying throughout the hunt. With careful precision, he activated the changes all at once. Temperature spikes in random zones, complete darkness in others, water systems flooding specific areas. The entire dome became chaotic, unpredictable. The hunters had superior senses and technology, but all that technology relied on predictable environmental conditions. Now nothing was predictable. They were forced to move carefully, constantly adjusting to new hazards. Daewon moved through the chaos like he belonged there. He had created this environment. He knew where every hazard was. He used the darkness and confusion to get closer to the hunters than he ever had before. He didn't attack them. He didn't need to. He just needed to survive until the 3rd cycle ended. And now finally, he had turned the entire dome into his hunting ground. The hunters realized what had happened. They understood that the human had transformed the hunt. They were no longer hunters tracking prey. They were powerful beings trapped in hostile territory controlled by an enemy they couldn't pin down. One of them transmitted a message that echoed throughout the dome, meant for Daewon to hear. You understand now, don't you? Why we came. Daewon, hidden in the darkness of a flooded tunnel, whispered his reply even though they couldn't hear him. Yes, you came to remind us what we are. The final cycle had begun, and as Daewon moved through the chaos he had created, he felt the final hours of the 3rd cycle approached. Daewon was beyond exhaustion. His body had moved past pain into a state of mechanical function. He no longer felt the cuts and bruises. He no longer registered hunger or thirst. There was only movement and survival. The 2 remaining hunters had adapted to the chaotic environment he created. They moved more cautiously now, working together with even tighter coordination. They had stopped trying to track him conventionally. Instead, they were systematically clearing the dome zone by zone. It was a smart strategy. Eventually, they would trap him. Eventually, he would run out of places to hide. But eventually took time, and time was running out for them, not for him. Daewon watched from a flooded section he had created by redirecting the water systems. The hunters were 300 meters away, searching methodically. He could wait here, could let them come to him while the cycle timer counted down, but something in him refused that passive approach. Something old and primal that had awakened during the hunt. If he was going to win, he wanted to win completely, not just survive. Dominate. He began to move toward the hunters instead of away. He used every trick he had learned over the past 3 cycles, silent movement through water, using shadow and terrain, controlling his breathing to near silence. He got within 50 meters of them before they detected his presence. Both hunters turned immediately, weapons ready. But Daewon didn't run. He stood in the open, visible, waiting. The damaged hunter gestured to its partner. They split up, beginning to flank him. It was textbook predator tactics. Surround the prey, cut off escape routes. Day One watched them move. 30 meters, 20. He could see details of their armor now. The dents and scratches from 3 cycles of pursuit. They were tired too. Not as tired as him, but tired nonetheless. At 10 meters, he moved. Not running away. Running between them, forcing them to adjust their formation. He was faster over short distances. More agile. He used that advantage to disrupt their coordination. The hunters pursued but couldn't close the distance without breaking formation. Day One led them to a section of the dome where he had sabotaged the structural supports. Not enough to collapse anything immediately, just enough to make it unstable. He stopped in the center of the unstable zone. The hunters entered, weapons tracking him. The ground beneath them groaned under the weight of their armor. "You have 2 choices," Day One called out. His voice was hoarse from lack of water and exhaustion. "You can pursue me across ground that might collapse under your armor's weight. Or you can stop and let the cycle end." The hunters stopped. They assessed the situation. One of them tested the ground with its foot. The floor cracked ominously. "This is not a matter of strength," Day One continued. "You are stronger, faster, better equipped. But I have made this environment mine. Every step you take is on ground I prepared. Every choice you make is one I anticipated. This is how humans hunt. We make the environment our ally." One of the hunters spoke, its voice amplified through its helmet. "You have proven your point, human. You are not prey." "Then acknowledge it," Day One replied. "Acknowledge what I am. What my species is." The 2 hunters looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Then, together, they raised their fist to their chests in salute. "You are recognized," they said in unison. "Predator." They turned and walked away, withdrawing from the hunt. Behind them, Day One finally allowed himself to collapse. He lay on the unstable floor, staring up at the artificial sky of the dome, and let the exhaustion wash over him. He had won. Not by surviving 3 cycles by hiding and running. He had won by hunting the hunters. By proving that humans were not weak. They were different. And different could be deadlier than strong. The dome entrance opened. Korvath entered alone, his massive form moving with quiet grace. He approached Day One and stood looking down at him. "Stand," the Shalkor leader commanded. Day One tried. His body refused to cooperate. Korvath reached down and pulled him to his feet with surprising gentleness. "You understand now," Korvath said. "What I saw in you, what exists in your species." "The persistence," Day One replied. "The refusal to quit, more than that. The ability to adapt, to learn from every encounter, to turn disadvantage into advantage. Most species would have panicked and died in the first cycle. You analyzed the situation like an engineer analyzes a problem. You broke it down into components and solved each one." Korvath led Day One toward the exit. "But there is something even more significant. Something that makes humanity truly dangerous." "What?" "You never stopped thinking of yourself as weak. Even as you hunted my warriors, even as you dominated the environment, you still believed you were inferior. That humility combined with deadly capability is terrifying. An enemy who knows they are weak will use any method, any strategy, any sacrifice to win. They have nothing to prove except survival." They exited the dome. Outside, the entire station population had gathered. They stood in silence, watching as the human engineer emerged with the ancient predator. Korvath addressed them all. His voice echoed through the docking bay. "The hunt is concluded. Kang Day-wan has survived 3 cycles and claimed victory over 3 Shalkor warriors. By the ancient laws of my people, I declare humanity a recognized predator species." Silence. Then chaos. Aliens erupted in shocked conversation. Some protested. Others demanded explanations. A few, like Ambassador Crystal, simply stared with new understanding dawning in their crystalline features. Belcros pushed through the crowd. His face was twisted with disbelief and anger. "This is impossible. Humans are weak. This human got lucky. That proves nothing about the entire species." Korvath's golden eyes fixed on the Draknor engineer. "Lucky for 3 cycles? Against trained Shalakor hunters? Your denial reveals your fear, Draknor. You fear what humans might become if they remember what they are." He turned back to the crowd. "For 10,000 years the Shalkor have watched the galaxy. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have seen species reach for greatness and achieve mediocrity. We left because we found nothing worthy of our attention, no species with the potential to challenge us or themselves. But humanity is different. They arrived late to the galactic community. They were dismissed as weak. They accepted roles beneath their capability, and in doing so, they forgot their true nature. We came to remind them. Director Corvin stepped forward, his crystalline body glowing with confused colors. What happens now? What does this recognition mean? It means humanity is invited to join the ancient alliance of predator species. It means they will be trained, tested, and prepared for what is coming. What is coming? Hana called out from where she stood with Commander Jiwon. Korvath's expression darkened. The galaxy beyond your borders is not empty. Species exist there that make the Shalkor look peaceful. They are patient. They are powerful. And they are finally ready to expand into explored space. When they arrive, your peaceful civilization will fall in days unless you have predators to face them. And you think humans can stop them? Ambassador Krixtal asked. I think humans can become what they were meant to be. Persistence hunters who never quit. Pack animals who fight for their own. Strategic thinkers who turn every disadvantage into advantage. Combined with modern technology and training, yes, they can stop what is coming. They might be the only species that can. Korvath approached Daewon again. He placed both hands on the human shoulders. You will carry this mark. He pressed his thumbs against Daewon's chest. Energy flowed from his armor, creating a symbol that glowed briefly before fading into Daewon's skin like a tattoo. This identifies you as a recognized predator. All species allied with the Shalkor will know what it means. You have earned respect through trial. Carry it with honor. Daewon looked down at the mark. It was a simple design. A circle with a line through it. The universal symbol for hunter among the ancient species. What about the others? He asked. The other humans on this station. On Earth, throughout the galaxy, the message will spread. Already other Shalkor are conducting similar tests at human colonies across known space. Some humans will fail, some will succeed. But the pattern is clear. Your species remembers when given the chance. You are all hunters who forgot the hunt. Korvath stepped back and addressed the crowd one final time. The Shalkor will be watching. We will be training. And when the darkness beyond arrives, we will fight alongside those who prove themselves worthy. That now includes humanity. He turned to his warriors. We are finished here. Return to the ships. The Shalkor filed out in perfect formation. Before Korvath left, he looked back at Daewon one last time. You asked earlier why I stopped when I first saw you, why I recognized something others did not. Yes, Daewon replied. It was your eyes. Every other species looks at a Shalkor with fear or awe. You looked at me with assessment, calculating, already planning how to survive an encounter. That is not prey behavior. That is predator instinct. You were evaluating me as a threat to be neutralized, not a superior to be feared. I didn't realize I was doing that, Daewon admitted. Exactly. It was instinct. Buried deep, waiting to be awakened. Korvath's expression might have been a smile. Now it is awake. Do not let it sleep again. The Daewon spent 3 days in the medical bay. His body was pushed beyond any reasonable limit during the hunt. Broken ribs, torn muscles, exhaustion so complete that he slept for 30 hours straight. But he survived. Humans always survived. While he recovered, the galaxy was changing. News of the hunt spread faster than anyone expected. The Shalkor had conducted similar tests at 27 human colonies simultaneously. 17 humans survived. 17 humans earned the hunter's mark. 17 humans proved that humanity was not what the galaxy believed. Earth Command called an emergency session. The Galactic Council demanded explanations. Alien species that had dismissed humans for decades suddenly wanted reassessments. Fear and respect mixed in equal measure across known space. On the station, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The cafeteria that once buzzed with mockery now held tense silence whenever humans entered. Velcross avoided eye contact. Thalaxi treated her human colleagues with careful politeness. Even minor alien species that had barely acknowledged humans before now gave them space and consideration. Hana visited Daewon daily, bringing reports and updates. You're famous, and she told him on the 3rd day. Every news channel in the galaxy is running footage of the hunt. They're analyzing your tactics. Military academies are already incorporating your strategies into their training programs. That's ridiculous, Daewon said. I'm not a soldier. I just did what I had to do to survive. Exactly. That's what makes it remarkable. You weren't trained for combat. You're an engineer, and you beat apex predators through pure adaptation and persistence. That's the story everyone is talking about. Commander Jiwon entered the medical bay. She carried a data pad and wore an expression Daewon had learned meant serious news. Daewon, you have visitors. Very important visitors. Who? Earth Command sent a delegation. And Ambassador Crixtall from the Galactic Council wants to speak with you. They're waiting in the conference room. Daewon tried to stand. His body protested, but he forced himself upright. Help me get dressed. Can't meet them looking like this. 20 minutes later, wearing a clean uniform with the hunter's mark visible on his chest, Daewon entered the conference room. 5 humans in Earth Command uniforms stood when he entered. Ambassador Crixtall, the crystalline being, hummed in greeting. Admiral Kim Tae-hyung, the highest-ranking officer present, stepped forward. Engineer Kang Daewon, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, thank you. What you accomplished has changed our position in the galaxy forever. I was just trying to survive. Sir, Daewon replied, and in doing so, you proved what we always suspected but could never demonstrate. Humanity belongs among the great species of the galaxy, not as servants or junior partners, as equals. Ambassador Crixtall moved forward, his crystalline body glowing with respectful colors. The Galactic Council has voted. Humanity's status has been elevated. You will receive full representation, full voting rights, and access to technology previously restricted to senior species. Why? Daewon asked. Because I survived a hunt? Because the Shell Corps recognized you, Crixtall replied. In 10,000 years of galactic history, they have only recognized 3 other species as predators. Those species became the most powerful in the galaxy. The Shell Corps do not make mistakes in their assessments. If they say humanity has predator potential, we must acknowledge it. One of the other human officers, Captain Park Minji, spoke up. There's more. The Shell Corps have offered to train human forces in their methods. They're calling it the Persistence Protocol. They want to awaken the hunting instincts in all our military personnel. Why? Daewon asked. Why are they helping us? Admiral Kim pulled up a holographic display. It showed regions of space beyond the galactic border. Because of this, long-range sensors have detected movement in the deep void. Massive fleets. Unknown species. They're moving toward explored space. The threat Korvath mentioned, Hana said quietly. She had entered the room behind Daewon. Yes, the Admiral confirmed. The Shell Corps called them the Devourers. Ancient species that consume entire civilizations. They've been dormant for millennia, but they're waking up. And when they arrive, every species in the galaxy will need to fight or die. The Shell Corps believe humans can help stop them? Daewon asked. They believe humans are the key, Crixtall said. Your species has something no other species possesses. The ability to endure impossible odds and find victory anyway. The Devourers are physically superior to everything in this galaxy, but they've never faced a species that refuses to quit, that hunts through persistence and adaptation. Captain Park continued. Earth Command is implementing new training programs across all colonies. We're recruiting humans who show predator aptitude. The goal is to create specialized forces that think like you did during the hunt. Strategic, adaptive, relentless. And you want me to help train them? Daewon guessed. We want you to lead them, Admiral Kim corrected. You're one of 17 humans who earned the hunter's mark. But your hunt was the most thoroughly documented. Every move you made, every trap you set, every adaptation you created. It's all recorded. You're the template for what humanity can become. Daewon looked at the mark on his chest, a simple symbol that now carried enormous weight. I'm not a leader. I'm an engineer. You're a survivor, Commander Jiwon said. She had been standing quietly near the door. And survivors know how to teach others to survive. That's what humanity needs right now. Before Daewon could respond, an alert sounded. Director Korvan's voice echoed through the station. All personnel to observation deck immediately. The Shell Corps ships are returning. Everyone rushed to the observation deck. Through the massive viewports, 3 Shell Corps ships approached the station. But this time they were not alone. Behind them came dozens of smaller vessels, all bearing the same organic metal construction. Korvath's face appeared on every screen. We return to complete the claiming ceremony. All humans on this station will assemble in the main docking bay. The 5 humans gathered quickly. Daewon Hana, Commander Jiwon, and the 2 others who had been off duty during the original hunt. They stood together as the docking bay doors opened. Korvath entered with a full honor guard of 20 Shell Corps warriors. They moved in perfect formation, armor gleaming. The entire station population had gathered to witness whatever was about to happen. Humanity has been recognized, Korvath announced. But recognition alone is not enough. You must be claimed, formally accepted into the alliance of predator species. He approached each human in turn. He placed the hunter's mark on those who didn't already have it. When he finished, all 5 humans bore the symbol. You are now claimed by the Shalkor, Korvath declared. You will be trained in the old ways. You will learn to hunt as your ancestors hunted. You will become what you were meant to be. And when the darkness comes, you will stand with us against it. He turned to face the assembled crowd. Let all species witness. Humanity is no longer prey. They are predators. Treat them accordingly. Velcro stepped forward from the crowd. He approached Daewon slowly, his reptilian features showing an expression Daewon had never seen before. Humility. I owe you an apology, Velcro said quietly. I mocked you. I dismissed your capabilities. I was wrong. Daewon considered the Draknor engineer, the being who had tripped him, who had publicly humiliated him, who had represented everything wrong with how the galaxy treated humans. We were never weak, Daewon said, not angrily, just stating a fact. We were just being polite. Velcross's scales rippled with what might have been fear. He stepped back, understanding the warning in those simple words. Politeness was a choice, and choices could change. Korvath gestured to his warriors. We will remain in this sector for 1 cycle. Human personnel who wish to begin training will report to our ships. Those who choose not to participate will be respected. But I encourage all humans to remember what Kang Daewon proved. You are capable of greatness. Do not let others convince you otherwise. As the ceremony concluded, people slowly dispersed. The humans remained together, processing what had happened. Their entire existence had changed in less than a week. What will you do? Hana asked Daewon. Will you go with them? Begin the training? Daewon looked at the Shalkor ships through the viewport. He thought about everything that had happened. The mockery, the hunt, the recognition, the claiming. Yes, he said. Not for myself, but because others need to learn what I learned. We spent too long accepting what others said about us, too long believing we were inferior. It's time to remember what we are, what we've always been. And what are we? Commander Jiwon asked. Daewon touched the hunter's mark on his chest. Survivors, adapters, persistence hunters who never quit. We're the species that looked at ice ages and said, not today. The species that faced down predators stronger and faster than us and won through sheer refusal to die. We're humans, and it's time the galaxy remembered what that means. Later that night, Daewon stood at the observation window in his quarters, the same window where he had stood on his first day, watching the stars and dreaming of being part of something greater. He touched the glass gently. Out there, beyond the visible stars, ancient threats were moving.